Let's start with the main thing. How much have Americans saved for retirement? The answer will shock you. Almost 3 out of 4 Americans, 71%, are approaching retirement with savings of, at most, a 5-figure amount. That is, less than $100,000. And 28% have nothing at all, $0, 0 cents. And these are not some young people who are too early to think about retirement. Between 25% and 35% of people in every age group from 18 to 64 report that they have no retirement savings at all. Even among those over 50, 1 out of 5 has not saved a single cent. Now let's look at median savings. That is, the amount relative to which half of people have more and half have less. The median retirement savings of all American families are $87,000. And how much, in the opinion of Americans themselves, do they need for a comfortable retirement? $1.26 million. This is their magic number. Do you see the gap between reality and expectations? An abyss of more than $1 million. Let's break this down by age groups. Among people 55 to 64, those who are about to retire, median savings are $185,000. For 65 to 74, $200,000. This is 6 times less than that magic number. And now the most frightening part. 43% of working adult Americans have no retirement savings at all. That is more than 40 million people. 40 million. This is the population of an entire country. For example, Poland or Canada. All these people are heading into old age with empty pockets. Among those who have at least some savings, the picture is also not encouraging. A quarter of them have saved an amount equal to their annual salary or less. Imagine, you are 55 years old, you earn $60,000 a year, and you have saved $60,000 for the rest of your life. With an average life expectancy over 80, this is money for about 1 year. And the situation is not improving. 58% of working Americans say that their retirement savings are behind where they should be. 37% believe they are significantly behind. And these figures hardly change from year to year. 57% in 2024, 56% in 2023. The problem is not being solved. It is frozen. Now let's add demography to this picture. And here it becomes truly frightening. In the year 2025, the United States entered an unprecedented demographic shift. More than 4 million Americans will reach retirement age this year, and next year, and the year after that. Every year until 2027, 4.1 million people per year will cross the line of 65. Experts call this the silver tsunami, or the peak 65. This is the largest surge of potential retirees in U.S. history. Let's translate this into understandable numbers. Every day, every single day, more than 11,200 Americans celebrate their 65th birthday. Before, it was about 10,000 per day, now even more. By the year 2030, all 73 million baby boomers will be 65 or older. This will be the first time in U.S. history when the population over 65 exceeds the population under 18. For the first time, there will be more elderly people than children. And here is what is critically important to understand. The ratio of workers to retirees is rapidly falling. At the turn of the 21st century, there were 3.4 workers, people who paid taxes into the system, for one Social Security recipient. Now this ratio has fallen to 2.7. By 2035, it will be about 2.3. Put simply, fewer and fewer people are paying, more and more people are receiving. The math does not add up, and people are also living longer. In 1935, when Social Security was created, a 21-year-old man had a 50% chance of living to 65. He retired, fished, babysat grandchildren, received a gold watch, and died 5 years after payments began. Today, if you are approaching 60 and in good health, you will easily live another 20 to 25 years. That is a very long time to make ends meet if you are bankrupt. But how did this happen? Just half a century ago, the American retirement system was considered exemplary. The answer lies in one of the largest experiments ever conducted on ordinary people, the transition from traditional pensions to the 401k system. Let's start with history. In the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the U.S. retirement system stood on 3 legs, like a stool. The first leg was Social Security, the government pension. The second was a corporate pension from the employer. The third was personal savings. Corporate pensions back then were completely different. These were so-called defined benefit plans, plans with guaranteed payouts. You worked for a company for 30 years, and the company paid you a pension for the rest of your life. It did not matter what happened in the stock market. It did not matter how much you personally saved. The employer bore the responsibility. In the mid-1980s, about half of private sector workers were covered by such plans, and then everything changed. In 1978, Congress passed a tax law with an innocent amendment, Section 401k. Initially, it was conceived as a small supplement to traditional pensions, a way for top executives to set aside a little more money for old age with tax benefits. But corporations quickly realized that 401k allowed them to significantly cut costs. All investment risk was shifted from the company to the worker. There was no longer a need to guarantee payouts, hire actuaries, or worry about underfunding pension funds. And the Great Substitution began. Since 1985, more than 84,000 traditional pension plans have disappeared. In 1985, there were 170,000 plans with guaranteed benefits and only 30,000 401k plans. By 2005, only 41,000 traditional plans remained, and 417,000 401k plans had appeared. People were told, "This is freedom. You control your own money. You can become a millionaire." And workers accepted this. They overestimated the promises of 401k and the prospect of accumulating investment wealth. But reality turned out to be harsh. The median value of 401k accounts today is about $17,000 to $18,000. That is enough for roughly $80 per month for the rest of one's life. Nearly 40% of participants in these plans have accumulated less than $10,000. The system failed for several reasons. First, people turned out not to be very good investors. They sold during downturns, bought at peaks, and avoided the right asset classes at the wrong times. Second, high fees consumed up to 20% of savings. Third, stagnating middle-class wages simply left no money for saving. Fourth, the cost of education, healthcare, and housing grew faster than incomes. Today, only 14% of Generation X, people aged 45 to 60, have a traditional pension. For comparison, among baby boomers, 56% did. One leg of the stool has been almost completely sawn off. Well, fine, you might say. There is Social Security, a government pension. Yes, there is. And for many, it is the only source of income. Social Security is the primary source of funds for retirees with household income below $50,000. 78% of all retirees rely on these payments. Among baby boomers, 83%. Among those earning less than $50,000 per year, 85%. 61% of current recipients say that if they miss even half of one monthly payment, they will not survive financially. And here is where the most frightening part begins. The Social Security Trust Fund that pays old age benefits is projected to be depleted in 2033. Not in 2050, not in 2040, in 2033, in 7 to 8 years. After the fund is depleted, if Congress does nothing, all recipients, both current and future, will automatically face a reduction in benefits of 23 to 24%. Let's translate this into dollars. The average retiree receives about $2,000 per month. A reduction of 23% means a loss of approximately $460 per month. That is $5,500 per year. For a couple with average income retiring at the beginning of 2033, this will mean a reduction in annual income of $18,000. And the situation is getting worse. Recent legislative changes, including the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, have accelerated the insolvency date. Some estimates now even point to the end of 2032. The Social Security deficit over the next decade will amount to $3.6 trillion. Over 75 years, $25 trillion. This is not a typo, $25 trillion. At the same time, solutions do exist. Taxes could be raised, benefits could be cut, the retirement age could be increased, or these measures could be combined. But each of these solutions is politically toxic. Raising taxes angers some voters. Cutting benefits angers others. That is why politicians prefer not to touch this topic. As one economist said, "We knew exactly what was coming for 40 years. If you want to understand where Social Security is today, read the New York Times from 1990. The problem was known for decades and ignored for decades. The retirement crisis does not hit everyone equally. It amplifies existing inequality. Workers earning more than $150,000 per year save for retirement almost 13 times more than those earning less than $50,000. The wealthy become wealthier even in old age. The racial gap is enormous. White Americans have median retirement savings of $100,000. African Americans, $39,000. Hispanic Americans, $53,400. A difference of 2 to 3 times. The gender gap is no less significant. Women are more likely than men to have no retirement savings at all, 50% versus 47%. Only 22% of women have accumulated more than $100,000 compared with 30% of men. 42% of women plan to live on less than $3,000 per month in retirement versus 27% of men. The educational gap is colossal. People without a high school diploma have median savings of about $50,000, almost $100,000 less than college graduates. And this gap has only increased over the past 30 years. Black and Hispanic workers who have access to 401k plans contribute about 40% less than white workers under otherwise equal conditions. This means that white middle-income workers receive more than twice as much free money from employers in the form of matching contributions. It is easy to say people are to blame themselves, they should have saved. But let's look at the systemic reasons. Almost half of all Americans do not have access to retirement savings through an employer. They simply do not have the ability to automatically set aside money from their paycheck. And if you do not have such access, all responsibility falls on you. You have to go to a financial company yourself, figure out investments, and open an account. When you work 40 hours a week at a physically demanding job, the last thing you want after your shift is to go to a financial advisor and discuss target index funds. It is intimidating, it is overwhelming, and financial companies do not always create a friendly environment for ordinary people. So people postpone this decision again and again, and suddenly they are 55 and there is almost no time left. The second reason is inflation eating away savings. 68% of Americans say they were unable to save as much as they wanted because of inflation. 51% completely stopped or reduced retirement contributions. The third reason is debt. Americans have more than $1.2 trillion in credit card debt with an average interest rate of nearly 23% per year. 37% of Americans have more credit card debt than retirement savings. That is more than 90 million adults. The fourth reason is financial illiteracy. Americans correctly answer only 48% of questions on basic financial literacy. Only 27% correctly answered 5 out of 7 simple financial questions. Most do not understand how compound interest and inflation work. 53% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. This applies to people at all income levels. Even 32% of those earning more than $100,000 per year. 3/4 of Americans agree that the country is experiencing a retirement crisis. This is no longer a forecast. It is reality. A study by the Pew Charitable Trust showed that the retirement savings crisis could cost federal and local budgets approximately $1.3 trillion by 2040. Insufficient income among elderly households will increase demand for Medicaid, SSI, and other assistance programs. According to Morningstar simulations, about 45% of Americans leaving the workforce at 65 risk running out of money during retirement. According to the TIAA Institute, more than 40% of all American households may be left without money in retirement. The number of workers older than 75 in the labor force is projected to almost double over the next decade. People simply cannot afford to retire. Debt among older Americans has increased many times over. For households headed by people aged 65 to 74, debt has grown more than 4 times since 1992, from $10,150 to $45,000. For those older than 75, 7 times. 59% of workers plan to work in retirement, not because they want to, but because they are forced to. Let us summarize. Half of Americans have saved less than $87,000. 43% have saved nothing at all. Traditional pensions have practically disappeared. The 401k system shifted all risk onto workers, and most failed to cope with that risk. Social Security, and the last safety net, which is cracking, and in 7 to 8 years will begin paying only 77% of what was promised. Every day, 11,000 people cross the line into 65 years of age. By 2030, all 73 million baby boomers will be of retirement age. And politicians continue to ignore the problem because any solution costs votes. This is not a story about lazy people who did not want to save. This is a story about a system that promised freedom and choice, but delivered risk and uncertainty. A system where those who are already wealthy win, and those who needed protection the most lose. The clock is ticking. The year 2033 is closer than it seems. And this story is far from over.